All right, welcome back everyone to day three of the CEO Time Warp. I don't know about you, but like time flies when you're having fun, right? And yet somehow time has this way of like slowing down. And it's because there's purpose and there's presence. And it's not busyness as usual, right? Because we're starting to approach our time as a CEO, as a Christ-empowered operator, intentional, strategic, not saying I'm good, but always looking to see how can I grow, right? What more, not just like what more do I have to do in my time, but like, how can I really see this thing as this gift I've been given that I am resigning from managing time? Say resign in the chat if you're like, I am over managing anything, time, people, like nobody wants to stay in that middle management place because you want to focus on multiplying time. Okay. Drop multiply if that's what you'd rather do than manage anything, right? Especially your time and your revenue and results. Who wants to multiply some revenue and results? This is where it starts. Okay. So although today is day three, I want you to know the fun isn't over yet. We still have today. And then tomorrow we've got a bonus session. And we are actually going to, I really encourage you to come because it's going to be very interactive. We are going to literally look at each leg of this three-legged stool, the schedules, the systems, the strategies, and think about you and your business so we can identify the gaps. Where are things missing? Or where do you think you have some elements of that, a schedule, a system, or a strategy, but it's not the kind that's actually scaling and multiplying your time? We've been talking about this each day this week. So if you need, you can go back and listen or come tomorrow and we'll put it all together. Okay. And then tomorrow you will walk away not just going, oh, I have gaps, I have holes in my bucket, right? Nobody wants holes in their bucket. You're going to walk away knowing exactly what to do to fix those holes, or even better, how about this? To up level, right? Each of these legs so that you are 10xing your productivity and doubling your results before Q4 starts. How's that for roadie, right? How is that for roadie? Speaking of which, what is the roadie return on time invested that you want to see? Let's say by the end of the year. Okay. Today, I want to make this very like this feels doable, not like this pie in the sky, way far off. I don't even know where to start. So get your numbers in front of you. Okay. I encourage you to write this down every single time you show up. How many hours per week do you want to be working? What would that look like? What would feel good? What do you know, is enough? Now we can't say I'm going to work 5 hours a week and make $30,000, right? Like that's not possible unless you've got a really crazy business model. But like, what would feel good and be moving things forward? And how much revenue would you like to be bringing in per month? Okay, keep this in front of you because this is what CEOs do and helps us make strategic decisions. Okay, remember this dollar sign is that tangible way to measure our impact. Okay, so we're going to keep this in front of us. Now, I'm going to tell you guys a story about something that just happened since we were together yesterday. After we were done with day two, I got an email because I am a part of a bundle going on this week. And what I noticed was that when I got this email, she was showing like who's had the most registrations. I was neck and neck with one of my business besties for the top number of registrants for the bundle. And I was like, wow, that's really great. I'm so glad so many people are wanting this, right? But here's what I noticed. When I looked at that number, it was double the number of women who registered for this workshop. Now, at first, I was a little like, I don't know if I like that. But then I said, you know what? I'm going to get curious about those numbers. Okay. So I put on my CEO hat and I got really curious about those numbers, about the roadie, right? And here's what I noticed that bundle was all about your list, right? And we talked about this yesterday. How many of you said yesterday, yes, I want to get more leads, right? Say leads in the chat, right? Okay. All business owners want to get more leads, right? I know because that's what I want. That's what you want. We talked about this yesterday, right? Obviously, double the people said yes to that versus this because this was just a time thing and I'm good with that, right? But here is the thing. They think, and you may be one of those people who also register for that. If so, yay for you. Okay. So don't make this mistake because they think that list building is the skill they need to scale their business. Now, I'm not saying it's not, but do you know what is going to happen to the majority of those people, even off my list? Here's what's going to happen. Most of them, see if you can relate if you've ever done this before. Most of them will download a bunch of free stuff from a bundle, right? That promises to help you build your list, which I have no doubt it could if you actually did something with it, right? But what's going to happen? Most of that information is going to sit in an inbox unopened. Or maybe it's going to be in your spam folder where you never even see it. And even if you do open up the emails, and you actually take the next step and download the thing, the digital product, how many people are actually going to read through, right? Or watch or whatever that thing is, right? And of those people, how many are actually going to like print it off or put it on their tablet or like actually like do the work? And then of those people, how many are actually going to like implement whatever that guide was about for long enough to actually see the results of building their list? My guess is like less than 1%. Why? Because they don't have the time scaling systems, schedules, systems, and strategies to map out how they're going to use it to get to their lead goal. They say they want more leads, but they're buried in day to day and never get to mapping out how they're going to get there. They don't have a time scaling system for them or their team to execute the steps that need to happen to get the leads and follow up with the leads. Remember Hello to Let's Go workflow yesterday, our SOP? And they don't have the time scaling schedules to consistently put in the focused time over a period of time to make it work. Now, sure, it doesn't cost them anything because this is a free bundle, but they are never going to get the value out of what they could have because of what? Their time. Okay? See how this all comes back to time. Drop time in the chat if you are seeing, okay, I see how time is like this foundational thing to everything, right? If you want to build your list, if you want to scale your revenue, if you want to bring on more clients, if you want to fill in the blank of whatever that thing is, right? Then it comes down to learning the skill of time scaling. Because again, if we don't have all three legs of the stool, and not like, I kind of have schedules, but I get pulled off task, right? We talked about what those, what those look like, how to know. Or I kind of have systems, like I've got like a, to-do list, or I've got like, steps, but it's not all systemized and not all in one place so that you or somebody else could do it. And then today we'll talk about the strategies. Yeah, I've got a goal, I've got something I want to do, right? But you don't actually have a map to get there, right? You will end up wasting a lot of time and money on all of these other programs, platforms, whatever shiny object comes in your inbox or across your feed that you think you need. Do you know what just happened to me the other day? I actually did this a little live yesterday after we were together because I was sitting on the deck having lunch and I looked down at the sweater I was wearing. It was almost this color. And I realized I don't spend much time on social media as a time scaling strategist. I think it's more time wasting than time scaling, but that's a whole nother topic. So anyway, I had been on Pinterest because I'm looking for a mother of the bride dress. And so I'm wanting to get ideas and things like that. So I also had put in stuff about, like over 50. So of course I'm getting outfits and things. So anyway, there was this one outfit that was like, I was like, oh, I love that. If I had a sweater like that, like, oh my goodness, like that would look amazing, right? And I would love that. It could be a great transition piece between summer and fall, yada, yada, So of course it gets in my cart and it arrives at my house just like 2 days ago now. And as soon as I opened it, I realized I was like, ooh, that color does not look the same as what it did online. Anybody ever have that? Like, it didn't quite look like what it looked like online. Not that they were trying to make it look different, but I get it. Lighting is different and whatever. It's hard to do that. So, anyway, long story short, like I look at it and I'm even holding it up to different things in my closet going, yeah, this isn't gonna go. Like I thought this was gonna be like my basic piece that could do everything, right? This is the one thing I needed to complete my fall closet. And I looked down on the bottom. I have like two levels of racks. On the bottom one, this I had that sweater I wore yesterday. And I pulled it out. It was the exact style I had seen. It was the exact color that I wanted. I already had what I needed in my closet. But I had just spent time and money looking in other places, right? How many of you have purchased something that you thought was going to be amazing, and either you realized, oh my goodness, I already have three of these, anybody, right? Or it just hung in your closet and you never actually did anything with it. You never wore it, and you ended up just donating it, right? Anybody else been there with me? Okay. Now, how many of you, this is going to hurt a little bit more, have purchased a program, a membership, a course, even coaching? And it just sat there. It hung there in your closet so many times. Yeah. Okay. Right. Like, yes. Like, I think we are because we have this desire, like, this has got to be it. This is what I need. This is da, 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 right? You can and will probably spend a lot of time and money on a lot of things as a business owner. But here's what I want to tell you. If and until you invest in your time first, getting schedules, systems, and strategies in place, and not the kind that the time management people say, but the kind we're talking about here in time scaling, you will never scale your roadie. Okay. It will just sit and it'll just sit there, right? You may get to a certain point, but it's never really going to take it to the level that it could. So right now, everybody, pinky swear, okay? Pinkies up. I will not buy another thing online for my business until I do something with what I already have that's exactly what I need to make everything else work. What is that? Your time. Okay? You need this three-legged foundation. No more wasting time and money on all these flashy things. But here's what I will say. Like once you have this foundation built, now you can go and grab that thing from that list building bundle and tie it into your strategy, your bigger growth goal, and know exactly how it's moving you towards your next milestone. Create a system that is you or your team can execute, right? And then create the schedules that are going to give it the consistent focused time so that it actually does the thing. So I'm not saying that there's never a time and a place for those things, but we have to start here first. And here's how you know, okay? If you're looking at your current numbers, and they're nowhere near this, and you're not seeing much progress in moving towards this, you are not ready to go buy something else until you fix this, until you fix the roadie problem, okay? Until you fix like my time, because otherwise everything else is just gonna it's gonna end up costing you. Does that make sense? So yes, am I like putting a plug in for the fact that we should work on this together? Of course, right? I wouldn't be here if I didn't believe in this. And I really didn't think like this is what's going to help you scale your business. Now you go invest in that program. Now you go sign up for that course. Now you go whatever, and it will actually do something in your business. But way too many business owners, myself in the past, have all of these. We have like this graveyard of all this stuff that we thought was going to change everything and it didn't. Okay, so yes, Debbie says you've got to have the foundation first. Yes, Debbie. Okay, no more wasting time and money. Okay, so where have we been this week? Quick review. Day one, we talked about the time scaling schedules, that you can work less when you have time scaling schedules that tell you what it's time for. And we said that time blocking is not a scaling schedule. Yes, it may be helpful, but it is not actually going to scale your time. It's going to help you manage your time, which remember is going to cap your results. It's actually killing your results. So we talked about the time anchor zones and the business hour boundaries being one of those parts in there. And how do you decide and declare and defend, right? But it gets much more comprehensive than that. And I'll get into some of that tomorrow. Okay, on day two, we talked about the system side of things, right? How do you activate your team or your output with time scaling systems? To-do lists and even just workflows are not scaling systems. They are not scaling your time. They are not growing with you, right? You need the time scaling systems we talked about yesterday. You first need to know what are the CEO versus non-CEO tasks and what's truly a to-do versus a reoccurring task. And then you start building those scalable SOPs that we worked on yesterday. And you have that CEO dashboard that everything lives in that like literally makes everything one click and saves you so much. Okay, so your homework last night was to think about what are the next three scalable SOP systems that you would like to create. Okay, and remember, a lot of six-figure plus earners they don't have these, right? And they're wondering why it still feels like their team is either draining time or why they're running around doing all these things themselves, right? Because they're pushing it off, right? So I'm encouraging you to start now so that you can either have this plan to delegate or automate or maybe even delete, right? If it's not going to produce the roadie, that's why we attach a roadie to it. Return on time invested. We have to be measuring that to know if it's even worth our time and money in the first place. This is how you make your time and your team's time an asset. How good would it feel to open your inbox and see something sitting there that got done on your behalf, but it wasn't by you, right? Like, how amazing is that, right? That happens when we start building out these time scaling systems and not to keep duct taping everything together. Okay. So I would love to hear before we move on to today, one or two people who had some kind of aha yesterday about systems and about what scalable systems really look like. Whether it was something you learned or you realized or you recommitted to or you finally actually took action on. Is there anyone who's on live today who would be willing to unmute and just share what that was? I love it. Debbie has a note on her computer that says, no more programs until I use what I have. Yay, Debbie. Yes. This also comes back to like just consuming content and going on, webinar after webinar, even if you're not paying for it. Okay. Debbie, let's see if it should let you unmute. You should be able to unmute yourself.
So actually, just this morning, I had one that was conflicting with these classes this week. and I really was interested in it. It was important information that I really need, but I felt like I need this more right now because until I get these things in place, the other things I actually said this morning when I said no to it, I said those other things are just going to sit in my inbox like everything
Mm.
else, and I'm going to feel guilty because I spent money on it. And what I tend to do a lot of times is I'm like, well, I can't do it now, but if I buy their, extra VIP package, it'll be there forever. Well,
Mm.
it's there forever, but if I don't ever access it, it's wasted money. So I struggled with it for a few minutes and then I clicked no. And I said, nope, I'm focusing on this now because yesterday, a lot of things you said, I was thinking back to when I sat down for hours and did my reoccurring and my one and done and what could be delegated and how much time everything was going to take and everything. And I'm like, okay, what did I do with that? It's still sitting in a notebook that I want to get back to when I have time.
Ah,
So I this has just kind of been a reminder. I find that a lot of the things you talk about I've heard before, but I need to hear them over and over. And each time, maybe I implement a little bit more of it, to move forward. But it's definitely not like a hear it one time and do it.
sure. Yeah, this is all, and you guys just, I did not I was not in cahoots with Debbie this morning to like know what I was going to say to make it exactly what she was saying. Like that was totally just a God thing that it was exactly the same thing. But, here's the thing, you guys. Debbie is so right. She could have invested money in whatever that course was, which was important information, right? Or maybe it was free and she could have invested time in it, right? But it would if it's not actually moving her towards where she's growing and she's actually implementing it right away in her systems and schedules. Here's where when you've got these three things set up, and I'm going to show you guys, we can do this. And I'm doing a little like sprint that in 3 weeks we're going to get these set up and moving. So that way it's not like I'm waiting and I need to get back to that and it's not sitting in a notebook. I don't want this workbook to be sitting in a pile somewhere or in a binder or whatever. I actually want to like let's take this off of paper and get it like let's build your CEO dashboard. Okay, let's build your ideal week. Let's map out your growth plan for the rest of the year. Like let's start doing this stuff now so it's not, oh, I'll get back to that and do that. And then like we talked about yesterday, you can start layering, right? Because you're not going to maybe build every system at once, but we'll pick like the top ones. I have you start with a certain one called the daily, weekly, monthly dashboard, and then we can start, layering in. So then it's working for you and it's a lot easier to keep, building as you go versus feeling like, I have to have time to do all of it. All right, Lorianne, I'd love to hear what you want to share.
My aha from yesterday was when you said what would happen if you got like a flood of opportunities, and I realized I don't. My system for dealing with leads has worked fine with one or two leads a month, but there's no way that it would handle that, and I thought, okay, now I need to change that.
Okay, I love it. And we don't want to stay there, Lorian, right? Like one or two leads a day. I mean, like that's what we're looking for, right? Like yes. And so here is where, and you were the one, Lorian, who asked this question yesterday. What's the difference between a scalable SOP and an SOP, right? So just an SOP would be here's my process when I've got one or two leads coming in a month, right? Scalable SOPs is I am thinking about how this thing is scaling, right? And I'm consistently coming back in as I do scale, as I am bringing in one to two leads a week, then one to two leads a day, then one to two leads an hour, right? Like, wouldn't that be a great problem to have? And now you're consistently coming back to make sure that that is supporting the needs that you have so it doesn't crash, right? So I love that. And yeah, that's oftentimes we have to be forward thinking, which again, like, again, you've heard me talk a lot about team this week. Okay. And I know most of you, at least those who've been on live, don't have a team. But I want you thinking in mind of like, this is coming down the road. I will not push every button for the rest of my life because what happened? You will become the lid on your results and your time. You will max out your time. You will eventually need to bring on other people. So don't let that scare you. It's actually easier than you think. And it doesn't have to cost as much as you think. In fact, you could actually, I have some ideas for you that you can do it for free and it will multiply your time when you do it the right way, right? And so that's something I'm going to be teaching inside that time scaling team bonus is like, how do I start setting myself up now for this? Even if it's going to be months or years down the road before I do that. I mean, I'm just going to say, like, it very well could be that you bring on somebody before the end of the year and you'd be surprised. You'll be like, Lissa, thank you. Like, talk about multiplying my time. I'm so glad that I had this, right? So here's where pinky swear, we're not wasting any more time and money on things that like we actually aren't going to actually do right now, and we don't have these things to plug into, right? And where we're going to really be focusing on how is this thing helping me scale my time, not just check more boxes, right? Or get through a day or manage what's going on. Okay. I do still have a couple of spots open for those time scaling strategy sessions, right? So this is where we take this to the next level. Lorian did one yesterday. She and I sat down, right? And we looked at some of these things in her business and what she needed to get to what her roadie was. There was a gap. There's a gap for all of us, right? I have, I'm working towards the next level, right? So we all have this, we can just feel bad about the gap and keep doing things the way we've always done them and wonder why we don't get there. Or thank you, Lorian, for saying it was so helpful. Or we can go in and get strategic and go, okay, what can I do? What do I need to shift? How do I need to build these up, to the next level to make this thing happen sooner rather than later? Okay. So like I said, I've only opened up 10 spots. I've already done several of them, so there are not 10 left. But let me drop the link in the chat here, redeemhertime.com. And this is not for people who are current clients because you guys already know how you can work with me. But this is just a little quick questionnaire so I can see where you are, and then I'll reach out and we will schedule a time. Okay, so that is there. All right, day 3, we're talking about reaching goals faster with time scaling strategies. Now, you may have heard the word goal and just went, Lissa, I've already checked out of goals. Okay, hang on. I'm going to show you why that doesn't work, and you're probably right, right? I don't think goal setting is a time scaling strategy. So good if you already said I've sworn off the goals, right? But here's what happens. We get stuck in the weeds or always putting out fires. That's called working in your business. Okay? There's a difference between working in your business and working on your business. In your business is I'm just doing the maintaining things, just keep this thing alive and keep the wheels on the bus, right? Working on your business is like that bigger picture growth. Okay? And it's not the daily checklists that are going to propel your growth. It's going to be the projects and the goals and the right way that you approach them. Okay? So what if you were not only clear on what to do, that's our systems, when to do it, that's our schedules, but how this is actually moving you towards this thing that you say that you want, right? This is the strategies part. And I'm going to show you the exact 3 steps that I use personally. I teach my clients to map out specific specific plans so you're not paralyzed and overwhelmed. Who's ever like just been paralyzed and overwhelmed? I don't even know where to start. Or I start in a whole bunch of different directions and I wonder why I don't get somewhere, right? Or who starts feeling this pressure of maybe some kind of a timeline, whether somebody else said it or you said it, and and like you're just like, I'm not going to hit that anyway. Yeah. How many of you finished on time? Or like that's your normal, or even early? One of my clients, she was working on a project. We created a 12-week focus cycle plan for her, and she came to me and said, Lissa, I finished early. What do I do with my extra time? Hello, when was the last time you asked that question? Most business owners are like running to catch up and they keep pushing that timeline back and whatever, right? Like it moved her towards this, right? And then we were able to look at, okay, now what's the next thing? Like, what do we actually do with this thing, right? So I'm curious where you are with goals. Okay, so I want you to tell me in the chat if you're here live. Um, who here sets goals January, whether it's January 1st, we're going to say January 1st because it's kind of like a typical time of year that people do that, right? And you're like, yep. And every year, like clockwork, they happen. Like I hit everyone by December 31st. Anybody? Anybody set goals, but then you get lost somewhere along the way? You kind of feel like the tortoise and the hare, like you like get started because you're really excited and everything. It's like people going to the gym, right? January is like, the parking lot's full. Go back in February and you'll find plenty of parking spots, right? Yeah, some get lost. Okay, so some happen well, some get lost. There's a reason, right? Okay, some of the same goals for 30 years. Girl, we're gonna talk about that, okay? Who here has just given up on goals because you're like, I never hit them anyway, so why bother? Or I don't have time to even think about the bigger growth things. I'm just trying to keep my head above water. Who feels like that? I remember somebody mentioning that the other day. That is not going to scale your business. We have to take time to pull up and get that 30,000-foot view and work on our business, not just in our business. Otherwise, it is going to be very slow growth. Now, the tortoise did get there, right? That was what the tortoise did, right? It kept going instead of napping, right? But here's what I want to tell you. And we started this off like I think on day 1 I said this. Why does it have to take 30 years or 10 years or 5 years or 2 years or 1 year? Why can't you hit whatever this thing is even before the end of the year? We've got like just what, 4 months left, right? Okay. So if you are seeing this gap between where you are and where you want to be, again, good news. Has everything to do with these three things. Here's your answer. Not anything else out here yet, right? Until we get this. Then once we get this, now we can layer in those things. Because once your time is more connected to this vision God's given you, and you have the step-by-step process where it's mapped out, and you have the systems that you're plugging into, and you have the schedules that are focusing your time, and this is all happening with your team, now you're going to see it happen in less time. Okay. But, okay, here's what happens with most busyness owners. In fact, this is actually a principle. Have you ever heard of the 80-20 rule? It's called the Pareto principle. 80% of your results come from 20% of what you do. But guess where most business owners spend their time? In the other 80% of stuff that it isn't producing much results, right? As CEOs, we want to strategically do that 20%. It doesn't mean you don't do any of the other stuff. Well, or you could bring on team to do some of those things, right? But we can't not make time for those things and say, well, I just don't have time. Okay. This is where we have to include these three things. This is where the roadie method comes in, where I'm always measuring my roadie and I'm always plugging into these three things. Okay. Otherwise, it's going to take a really, really, really long time. Okay. Now, I recently had a client work with me, and she had a big name book deal. Like, if I were to say the name of the publisher, you'd be like, oh, wow, like that's legit. It's not just like I'm self-publishing on Amazon. Not that there's anything wrong with self-publishing on Amazon. I'm not saying that. But so she came to me with a very clear goal. I have to launch this book. She had a very clear date, right? I think it's November 11th. And she even had a 12-week plan, sort of. But here's what was happening. She was still feeling super overwhelmed, felt like there were so many things to do. And she kept saying to me before we met, she kept saying, Lisa, I don't have time. I don't know how I'm going to get all this done, right? And here's what happened. We sat down. She did one of my VIP sessions. We sat down for like several hours together on Zoom. We like got really clear on what needed to happen. We broke it down. She left with clarity and confidence that it was possible because of the time scaling strategy that we laid out. Okay. Now, again, she came in thinking she had a goal and a plan. But do you see how time scaling strategies can actually help you? Like, okay, now I actually know what I'm doing. And here's the beautiful thing about this process is when you are working on that, I don't have to worry about like step 5, 7, 8 over here when I'm on step 2, because this is already mapped out for me. I'm just focusing on 2. I was just reading this morning in Matthew. Don't worry about tomorrow, because tomorrow has enough worry of its own. How many of us are on step 2 and we're worried about step 8, 9, and 10? Right? Here's where, again, you can get some time back, right? And focus that time more intentionally in step 2 and then be ready, to move forward on this. Okay. But just having goals or even just having a plan, a somewhat of a plan, doesn't bring the growth. Okay. And I've even heard people say this week in conversations in DMs and here in the chat that you know what you need to do, but you're not doing it. How many of us have that, right? Could be the schedule that you have mapped out, but you're not doing it. Could be the map that you have for completing this project or hitting this goal. This is why we need time scaling strategies. And again, this is for all levels. Okay, this is not just I wish I would have known these things when I was first starting my business. In fact, I had somebody tell me today in our community. She's like, Lissa, where were you 20 years ago? I needed you then. I said, well, you know what? The best time to think about your time was 20 years ago, but guess what? The second best time? Today, right? So okay. But yeah, whatever level you're at, right? Even as 6, 7-figure earners, you can spend all your time in your business and only get so far and plateau and spread yourself thin, and your team is spread thin. Yes, like trees, exactly, right? And what gets you to one level is not what's going to get you to the next level, right? So here's where we have to keep coming back to time, thinking about the roadie and thinking like a CEO. Okay. And this is why you're not going to scale just because you added another project or goal. It doesn't just happen, right? We have to have a way to make it happen. This is where this strategy comes in. Okay. Now, here's one key thing. Let me ground this in some scripture and then we're going to tie it into business stuff. At church, we've been going through Philippians, and our pastor preaches like verse by verse. So sometimes it takes a really long time to even go through a short book like Philippians. But over the past couple of weeks, we've been in Philippians chapter 3. And Paul is talking about, I'm focusing on this one thing. I'm pressing on towards this one goal, right? And what is it? To know him, right? That is his one overarching goal. We've been talking about this stewardship thing, right? Like our one overarching goal, right, is to build his kingdom with the things that he's entrusted us here on this earth. That's stewardship, right? And he goes on to say in verse 15 This is how those who are mature think, right? They have a singular focus. They're not easily distracted. They're not like dwelling on the past and they're not just getting comfortable in the present. Like they are moving towards what they're being called to, right? And I had this conversation with one of my clients the other day that, it's sometimes the elevator feels like it's going backwards. And I said, but he's always calling us towards him. So we have to pause and go, is the Lord really giving me an escalator that goes down? No. Right? Why? Because verse 20 says our citizenship is in heaven. So, how do we live today in light of that day? How do we, even as we are setting these goals and creating strategies, and as we're creating systems, and as we're creating schedules, how do we see this as a stewardship thing? In Romans 13:11, it says, you know what time it is, not to sleep, for we are closer to salvation than when we first believed. So, let me ask you, are you living like the master is returning? Are you living like this is all building towards something else? That servant from the parable of the talents wasn't, right? And he could, if he really thought his master was coming back, he could have at least put that money in the bank and gotten interest to give to him, saying, I'm going to have something to give you. It's not much, but here you go, right? But those other two servants, they knew the master was returning and they lived like he was returning and they invested like he was returning because they were going to be accountable. So let me ask you this. If someone were to look at your goals and your progress, would they say that you are being a good steward? Or are you like easily distracted by circumstances or comforts or, doubts and fears and all of that stuff, right? Stewardship creates momentum, especially with our time, right? Now, again, the world is going to say you want to be more productive and profitable because you want more money, and right? Like, okay, right. I mean, yes, if I'm more productive and I'm doing things that are profitable, right, it will increase my results, right? Like the basic concept is there, but our motivation is different as believers, right? It's coming from a place of stewardship. What am I doing with what I have been entrusted? Okay, this is why we need to make sure that we have time scaling strategies that move us in the direction that matters because we don't have time to waste getting off distracted in the weeds or going in circles. Who wants to waste time going in circles? No, thank you. But there are two problems that business owners make. Mistake number one, going in too many directions. And what happens? You don't get anywhere or anywhere that matters, right? How many of us are chasing two squirrels or 22? Drop a two in the chat, right? Guess what? You won't catch either one or any of them. You're just going to end up wasting time and money and energy, right? Shiny objects, sparkly does not mean important, right? Any squirrel or shiny object chasers in the audience with me, right? 40. Okay, yeah. How many of you, Cubs for Business, have multiple goals or projects that are in the oven or half baked or on the back burner? I actually, a couple weeks ago, came up with a new definition when I was spending some time with the Lord, a new definition of the word done, D-O-N-E. You ready for this? Where completion meets momentum. Where completion meets momentum. That's what done is. Because here's the thing, if it's still in your Google Drive or in your notebook or in your head, it's not moving you forward, right? So we want to be focusing on the things that are actually going to propel us forward. So mistake number one is we're either doing nothing or we're trying to do too many things. Okay. So either, we're just kind of going in circles. But mistake number two, which is really interesting, and we've already kind of talked about this today, is we are giving that thing too much time, right? Good time management says January 1st, set your goals. This is what you're going to do by December 31st. Why does it have to take you 12 months to do that? Right? Again, we asked this question the other day. Most of you said that you were behind, you were not ahead of schedule or right on track, or maybe there were some things that were on track, but like here's where the traditional way of goal setting does not serve us because it puts it so far off that we feel like we can take a nap or we get tired on the way, right? Because that finish line is so far away and we lose track of time, right? And yes, we're busy, but it's really slow progress, or we're just in the quicksand of the daily stuff, right? It's a someday, one day plan. It's why things stay on our list for a year, 5 years, 10 years, 30 years, right? Like, no wonder most business owners don't scale because they give it too much time or they think it will take a lot of time. Why? Well, we're always just piling on more, right? And then we don't have these three things to support the more projects, more programs, more platforms. So it's not really helping us. And we're just diluting our focus and wasting time and money. And we're not going anywhere anytime soon. And our team's not in the same page. And we wonder why our time is maxed out and stressed out and burned out. Goal setting is not a scaling strategy. Let me say that again. Goal setting is not a scaling strategy, but I'm going to show you what is. Ready? Okay. Here's what CEOs do instead. They use what's called growth mapping. Well, I'm going to wait to turn that in just a minute. Okay. Now, what I need you to understand is this. Okay. Growth mapping means you have to know where you're going. And CEOs work from a vision point, not a vantage point. Difference between on top of the mountain where I can see, right? Okay, I can see the beach, I can see the coast, I can see the whatever I'm trying to get to. But what happens when you're down the valley? All I can see are the trees, around me, and I can't see where I'm going. So I don't know. I could be going in circles for all I know, right? I have no idea how long it's going to take. I remember when I was younger, yes, I will date myself, and most of you are in my same age category, but we did not have GPS, so it did not tell us our estimated time of arrival. We were just like hoping that the person driving actually knew where they were going and knew how to read a map because there was no like, whatever mapping system to tell you when to turn. And I remember we would ask my dad this question, "Are we there yet?" And he would always say, "Well, we're closer than when we started." Like that was his like, canned answer that he would always say, right? Like, and so, yeah, that's so often how a lot of business owners are like, "Well, we're closer than when we started. I think, I hope, maybe," which is why we have to be measuring the roadie. This is how we know, am I on the path or not? And the sooner you look at this and make some adjustments, right? If you got off on the wrong turn, right? You could go an entire day the wrong direction if you didn't have GPS and not know it, right? And then you got to make your way all the way back to figure, and miss out on whatever it was that you were supposed to be doing, right? Or now they have this thing that says recalculating, recalculating. So here's a funny story. We were moving. I don't know where my husband was going from one base to another when he was doing military stuff. Anyway, so I was driving our vehicle. He was driving the moving truck, but he was in a Spanish class because he was learning Spanish for the military. So the GPS thing, it wasn't our phones at that point. It was just that little box that you would like put up on your, dashboard. So it was in Spanish. Well, it started talking to me in Spanish, and I couldn't think that fast. I mean, I took Spanish in high school, like I took 4 years. So I mean, I know a lot, but like I wasn't prepared for that. And so it was like at the last minute and I missed a turn or whatever. And I just remember it saying, recalculando, recalculando. And then my husband's calling and, like, why did you not turn back there? Because I followed you. And of course, we're like in a major city. I think we're in Atlanta or something like that. Anyway, so now we have this GPS that says recalculando, recalculating, and it gets us back on track sooner rather than later. So, but as business owners, like, do you have something that's getting you back on track? Right? This is what we need. Okay. So instead of goal setting, we're going to start embracing growth mapping. Okay. So instead of just saying, "I'm going to California, I live in Illinois, hope I get there," we're going to actually like map it out, right? Where am I actually going to, make my stops along the way so that I can break this down? Because that's a really long trip. In fact, fun story, my first job out of college, I already had a teaching job contract, but of course, like school year didn't start yet, was working for Pathfinder Express, which was like MapQuest before there was MapQuest. So people would call in, they would tell me where they were starting from, where they were going to. I would plug it into the computer, get any other details I needed from them, print it out, and mail it to them so that they could have it to take on their trip, right? Like how archaic is that and how much things have changed. So, all right. So let's talk about growth mapping and how it's different. Okay. We want to know where we're going, but we also want to know how to get there. Okay. Or a compass. Yes. I'm very glad we don't have to live off a compass anymore. Although my husband is always like, "You better be prepared because someday you may not have technology." And I'll just hope that he's with me. So let's just say that. Okay. So here's the thing. As a CEO, you have to have a big vision. You have to know, like, okay, I'm going to California, right? But then you have to have small focus. Like, okay, I'm just trying to get to St. Louis. Like, that's the next, like milestone, right? Because then it gives us like those legs of the trip, and I don't get distracted or detoured or, off on some tourist trap unless I really think that I need to, right? And it actually is moving me to the next step, right? And so it comes with like having like a one thing focus after a time. What's the one thing that's going to move me closer to this? Okay. Now what's the one thing that's going to move me closer to that? Right. But instead of giving yourself 12 months, I teach a way of giving yourself 12 weeks. Now, you may be familiar with a 12-week year, and I will say that like that helped inspire this, but this goes way beyond that because the 12-week year, when you look at his examples, I mean, it's a great book, and I love the concept of don't give yourself 12 months, it'll take 12 months, focus on 12 weeks, right? But what happened, it's just like a list of these different like goals you want to hit every week, and they're not connected. And, it just kind of felt like, well, how do you even really know where you're really going? So I kind of took it a step deeper and said, okay, let's set some kind of a destination that we want to hit by the end of 12 weeks, right? And now it gives that finish line that's short enough. I'm not going to go take a nap, right? Because I can see that, right? Because the concept is every month ends up being like, or every week ends up being like a month, right? So if you create like a, this 12-week year concept, but we want to make sure we're going in one direction, not like a bazillion directions. Okay. Because, like we talked about before, work will take the time you give it. If you give yourself 12 months, it'll take 12 months. If you give yourself all day, it'll take all day, right? Like, sure, you're going to grow, but you're not going to scale, right? We want to be like, where am I focused? And for those of you who have a team now, or you will have a team, which should be every single person listening to me, there at some point will be somebody, even if they only do like an hour a week for helping you with something. Okay, that's okay. Even if it's your kids doing something to put stamps on something or whatever, that's still a team of some sort, right? Like you want to make sure that everybody's on the same page and that you're not having to hold their hand and you're not always trying to rein them back in, right? How many of us like we want our kids to help with something? My kids are all grown, so hopefully at this point, like I wouldn't have this problem. My friend was just telling me the other day, she has a business. She does bouncy houses in our small town area. And she had brought two kids with her to help her set them up. And she's like, Lissa, they were off in the field running around, like playing, while I was over here trying to build this thing. Like, that is not the kind of team we want. And even, I know, hopefully your team, if you're really paying them, is not like running in the field, right? But again, if they're not like focused in on here's what we're focusing on now, where we're going, right? Now they become an expense. And now you're doing a lot of hand holding and like pulling them back. So it's this is going to be really key. And one of the things I teach in that time scaling team bonus is how do you create this vision with your team and help them see their role and responsibility and be accountable to what that is. Okay. Fun fact. Anybody know what 12 weeks from today is? Today is a Thursday. That might give you a hint. Anyone know what 12 weeks from today is? 1 week before Thanksgiving. Okay? 1 week before Thanksgiving is 12 weeks from today. So here's what I want to ask you. What would you love to see happen or completed in your business by before the holidays hit? Okay, and we're going to be kind of mapping this out here in our workbook here in just a second. Okay, here's where so many business owners like next week it, next month it, next year it, whatever, right? Like, but CEOs start mapping out their time scaling strategies now, just like the systems we talked about the other day, right? Like not putting it off, right? Like let's get her done and let's get her started, like, and let's actually start taking steps towards that. Okay, so in your workbook. Yeah, when you're chasing 22 squirrels, I'm the one running in the field. Right. And how does that feel? You are exhausted. You are stressed out, worn out, burned out, right? That's why Jesus says, "Come to me. Let me show you a different way of doing this." Okay? All right. So, it's very simple. Again, nothing I'm teaching you this week is like rocket science. Like some of it is just like I think we overcomplicate things, so we do need to simplify it. But I think Debbie really hit on it when she shared at the beginning today. It's not just, "Oh yeah, I know." But are you doing? It's not just, oh yeah, I have that written out in my planner, in my notebook, in my head, in my whatever, but am I doing? Okay. And you guys don't need more information. What do you need more of? Implementation over time. Hello, right? Time comes, everything comes back to time. I can find any way to make any conversation come back to time. So sorry, not sorry. Okay, so our time scaling tool today is the Roadie growth map, right? We're not just goal setting, we're growth mapping. So we're going to do this right now in real time so that you can't say, I will come back to this later. Okay, so grab your workbook or grab something to write with and in. Okay, first thing is what is my one thing focus? Okay, now I want you to think about what is that one thing that you would love to see completed or happen in your business by the holidays or at least the end of the year. A lot of people are like, I don't want to have to, my business will look different once we hit Thanksgiving, and Thanksgiving is late this year. So it's going to be like that shorter window up till Christmas. So, I like to think in 12-week chunks anyway. So this is perfect, right? What would you love to see happen? Now, not 10 things, not five things, one thing. We're not chasing two squirrels. We're chasing one squirrel. I mean, one squirrel's hard to chase anyway, but that's a whole other point, right? Like that's where my analogy breaks down. So won't go there. Okay. What is one thing? It could already be something you started on. It could be something that you've been sitting on. It could be something you've never even thought of until like this very moment. What is one thing? Whether it's like a specific project. So it could be, for example, I'm working with a client right now who is printing a journal, right? She wants to have that in people's hands before the holidays because it would make a really great gift. Okay, so that's her one thing. For me, last year, it was the planner, right? I wanted to have that out by November. So cool. Such a cool story, you guys. Like literally, it was one 12-week plan after the next to get that thing going and get it out. The UPS truck, or I don't know if it was UPS or FedEx or whatever, literally showed up in my driveway 5 minutes before close of business on the day that I had picked to launch the thing, not knowing for sure if it was even going to be here by then. Like, how perfect is that timing? Right. And it was one of those things that like I'm watching for the truck all day long. And even if it didn't show up that day, it was like, okay, I could still pre-sell. And then as soon as it gets here, I'll ship them. Like these girls show up and they could like, they're like, wow, she's a little excited about these boxes. They're like, what did you order? I'm like, so anyway, long story short, that's how that thing happened, right? This is how anything happens. So what is it that you want to see happen? Yes, in all labor there, I love this. There is profit, but the talk of lips tendeth only to penury. There's a word for you, or poverty. Exactly. We just talked about it's not going to happen, but we have to decide what it is first. So, what's your one thing? I want you to drop that in the chat if you're here live. What is the one thing that you are like, I am either finishing this or getting, it might be like, so with the 12, with the planner, it wasn't like in 12 weeks I did the whole thing from start to finish. I broke it down into phases. So maybe it's what you want to do is part of a bigger thing. And so it's like, this is what I'm going to do before, we hit the holidays or before the end of the year. Okay. Getting my live stream launched. Yay. Love it. Somebody else, the Bible and breakfast book I've started. Getting it done. Yes. My planner business moved, relaunch, and systems in place to market, handle leads, and manage membership. Yes. And Lori, and I'm going to say that's a lot of different things in there, right? So let's try and pick something really specific, that it can be a project. Like I'm going to complete this. I'm going to, so this thing, whether it's a digital project or a physical product like my planner, or it could be, I'm going to add 100 people to my email list. Right. So that could be your one thing. And then we're going to brainstorm the different way, like their strategy of how you're going to map that out. So it could start with, kind of more of an intangible thing. Okay. Yes, getting those systems set up on the system that I teach. I love that. Okay. So that's step number one. You have to identify your one thing. Okay. And you're committing to it, right? You're putting it out here. We just said when you share it, you go up to 76% that you're actually going to do it. Okay. 95% when you get accountability. Okay. The next thing on here is what's the finish line? What is that finish line date that you're putting on this? Is it going to be before Thanksgiving? If so, open up your calendar right now, find out what that date is and write it down. Maybe you're waiting, maybe you're like, I'm going to give myself until December 20th and then have a buffer the last 2 weeks. That's fine. Maybe you want December 31st. It really doesn't matter. Here's what happens when you put a date on it, it gives you something to work towards. I've had many times that I've put a date on something and it ended up getting shifted and it's okay, right? Like it's okay, but it just activates the thing versus just like the one day someday plan. That never turns out and it never gets you anywhere fast and it definitely isn't going to scale. Okay. Oh, I love it. Melanie's got 1018. I love it. Yeah, it doesn't even have to be all the way to the holidays. Maybe you've got something you're like, I'm doing a sprint. Like, let's go, Melanie. Okay. So you got your finish line date. And it's okay if you're still looking at this, like by the end of today, you're going to have this and you're going to come share it in the group. Okay. All right. Now we need our roadie why, right? We need our roadie why. Okay. So roadie, what is the return on time invested? What is the actual outcome? Okay. Write that down. And why does that matter? Why does it matter? How is this going to propel your growth? Now, yes, it's okay to say, because I just want to get that darn thing off my list. How many of us? That's the reason you pick the thing because you're like, I am so sick and tired of talking about this one thing or thinking about this one thing. It just has to be done. Okay, that could be a motivation, but I want you to think CEO, think beyond, think scaling. How is you hitting that goal or finishing that project? How is this propelling your business forward? What is the return on this time? Because guaranteed there are going to be days between now and that date that you're not going to feel like it, that you're going to be really busy, that you're going to be really distracted, that you're going to be really discouraged, and you're going to be like, yeah, I don't think so. That's why we have to like, what's at the finish line? That marathon runner is like, they're not thinking about every mile. They're thinking about what's at the finish line, their family, their friends, the snacks, whatever, right? So we got to go like, okay, why does this matter? Okay. Now, the next step we're going to start this, but depending on the size of your project, you may not actually like get all of this done right now. And that's okay. Okay. You're gonna maybe just sit where you are for the next 10 minutes after we're done and finish this. Okay. The next thing I'm gonna have you do, on mine I just left space, but on yours it says brain dump, right? What are all the things that you think are involved with getting to this one thing done by this finish line? Right? Like get it all out on paper. Like brain dump it. The space you have right in front of you on the workbook may not be enough room. You may need to like grab a notebook or open a Google Doc. Like that's okay as long as it doesn't stay there. But get all the steps out of your head that you think this is going to involve. Like let's get it all out where you can see it. This is what happened with that woman I was telling you about who had a plan. She had a 12-week plan, but she didn't have all the steps out, right? And there were steps that like were going to take several weeks. And so then, so I'll tell you about how we get to there, but like get it all out, right? So you can see. And then what you're going to do is you're going to categorize and prioritize. What things go together? What order is this, like a literal has to be a step one, two, three? Or does this, do I just want to do this one before this one before this one? Sometimes there's a have to, and sometimes you just get to decide, right? So you're going to start kind of, again, getting all out of your head, right? Then what I'm trying to at least get you to today, and there's still a couple more steps to this process, is mapping out milestone one, milestone two, and milestone three. Okay, now in Melanie's example, she wants to be done by what was their date? October something, October 18th. Okay, so Melanie, you get to decide, right? Okay, what are the dates? What are the milestones I want to hit? What are the three main steps or main things that I need to hit, and what's the date on them? For those of you who don't have as short of one, maybe you go, okay, this is September, this is October, this is November, right? Like, but at least you're like, okay, so then when I'm in working towards milestone one, right? That's what I'm focused on. I've already put everything from the brain dump that goes into milestone two, so I don't have to worry about this right now, right? Right now I'm focusing in here on milestone one, right? And then we're going to hit milestone two, and now I'm focusing on that part, so that by the time we get to the end of milestone three, like the end of milestone three is the place you want to be, or at least that like next, like the next destination, right? For example, like with my planner, I had my ideation phase. So that was a 12-week plan. I had 3 months of these different steps of all the ideas and everything getting out of my head and looking at other examples. Then I had the design, and that was 12 weeks. I was working with the designer and we were back and forth. Da, da, da. Then I had the printing, right? So I'm working with that, right? Then I had the launching of it. That was another one. So it's not like I got from 0 to 60 in 12 weeks, but I knew where I wanted to be by the end of that. Okay. So then if you want the next step, right, this is like, okay, these could be like your monthly milestones. Now you're going to break it down into, okay, weekly targets, right? So if I want to hit this by the end of September, what am I doing week one, two, three, four, right? And same thing here. What am I doing? What am I doing? Okay. Now, here's the thing. I often go back to James 4. Because a lot of women say, and I'm sure you've experienced, and I have too, Lissa, I made plans and life happened. I didn't expect this. God brought another opportunity. Do you know what? I was actually working on the 12-week plan, and I wasn't necessarily planning to do this workshop series this week. And I just really felt like this is what I was supposed to do. And so at first, I tried straddling two different things. I was chasing two squirrels. And this other thing, it was something that I was committed to finishing this summer. It really needed to happen. I knew it was going to add a ton of value. Like it was really going to help me up level my service to my clients. I mean, like there's a lot of whys, right? But then here's Lissa trying to do two things for a few days. And I was like, my brain was like, again, chasing two squirrels, catching neither one, right? And I finally just went, Lissa, like, okay, this time warp thing is supposed to happen, and this is when it's supposed to happen. That thing, we're going to push pause on that, right? And so now I'll come back in September and finish that up, right? But what was happening was when I was dividing my focus, I wasn't getting very much traction on either of them, and my brain was always overloaded, right? And so like this has felt really spacious. I've been very able to just show up present to this, and anytime that other thing like gets up in my head and I'm like, oh yeah, I got to do this when this is done. Like it's not time for that. It's okay. I already have a plan mapped out for it, right? So now I can do that. Okay. So let me give you our top five for today. Each day I've been giving you a top five. You will find them typed out in the replay homework post inside the community. Here's our time scaling top five. Number one, build your bigger CEO vision. Like get up on top of the mountain, pull up 30,000 feet. Where am I going 5 years from now, 10 years from now? Like, where do I see this train going? Now, do we know for sure? Oh, that brings me back to, sorry, James. Um, James 4 talks about like, to you who say I'm going to go into this and that a city and do this and earn a business and build a business and whatever, like, how do you even know your life is a vapor, da da da, right? If the Lord wills, I will do this and that. It never said don't plan. It says make the plans, right? But we're holding them loosely, trusting that God's plans are bigger and better than ours, right? And that there may be things about that that will change or will happen faster or in a different time frame than we expected, and that's okay. Okay? So, but again, we've got this bigger vision that God has given us of where we're going. So keep that in front of you, right? Tip number two, share that vision with your team, with your supporters, with your peers. Share it with us in the community, right? Like bring other people into this, especially your team. You want them to feel how they're a part of that. And guess what? When you have accountability, now you're going to stay on track. When you feel like taking a nap, when you are tired, when you are confused, when you're like, I thought this is what I was doing, but now I'm not quite sure. Like, this is why we need other people around us. This is what gets you to the 95% that we talked about in day one. Most people don't think about it, they don't write it down, they don't share it, and they don't have accountability. Like when I work with my clients, we actually have a weekly accountability meeting every week. Now, it is optional. You can show up or not show up. It really, like that's up to you. But the women who show up, they're like, okay, it helps me like be intentional. And sometimes we show up and we're like, yeah, last week felt like a train wreck. And okay, I'm coming back to my plan. I'm coming back to this map that I have. How am I going to adjust it based on where I am now? Right? So you need that. Okay, tip number three. When you're doing this and you're thinking about between now and the end of the year, pick one thing. How many? One, not 21, right? Not all the should do's or the things I could do, or even all the things I said I was going to do last January, right? But the one thing I will do between now and the end of the year. The only way that I allow you to break that rule is if you pick one for your business and one personal. Like that's okay because, but for the most part, when it comes to like business stuff, like pick one thing. Now, you might find that there are a couple of things that are related. So great, tie them into one bigger thing and then maybe make them separate milestones or part pieces of that. Okay, number four, map out your milestones. Don't just say this is my one thing and brain dump all the stuff and then say, okay, I'm starting. You're not going to get there. Like you have to start breaking it down, break down your trip, right? What are the milestones I want to hit? Right? And to make it doable chunks and not just monthly, then you got to get smaller and smaller. And then, as we talked about, I've already kind of alluded to this, get accountability, right? That's how we get up to the 95%. Who, like come into our community, use that. Join me as a CEO. We have weekly accountability meetings where you get coaching and feedback and help and support, and then not just at that one meeting, but anytime, right? Like this is what we need if we truly want to scale our time and scale our business, right? When I work with clients, like the one I shared with you, like we go, okay, what is the project or goal? Why does this matter? And then we actually get really nitty gritty about breaking it down. And it is so amazing how that lifts the burden of feeling like it's so big. How many of us, that dream and vision God's given you is amazing and it excites you, and yet it feels so heavy and it feels so far off, right? Like, here's how we actually start making sure we're making measurable progress towards it, right? So, if you're like, Lissa, I'm tired of like doing this on my own and like going over here in circles and like getting so far and then, like all the things that we've all done for forever, grab a time scaling strategy session. Like that is what that is for, because we can actually look at, okay, what do you want to see happen in your business by the end of the year? And how can we actually do that? So redeem her time. I dropped that in here. Oops, I can't type and talk. .com/CEO dash apply. Okay. Go ahead and grab, yeah, that. If you're listening to the replay, it's okay. I still hopefully will have a spot or two left by the time you hear this, right? Like, let's make sure that you've got the strategies that are going to move you forward. So before I flip this page, here's your homework tonight. If you haven't already, decide on your one thing. Put a date on it. Okay. And start brain dumping and breaking things down into the milestones. And I want you to think about that last question in the bottom there is how will I be accountable and adaptable? How am I going to make sure that I'm staying on track? And how am I going to have someone or something that's going to help me make shifts and adjustments to this plan when, yeah, when things don't always go the way that exactly I had it on paper, which doesn't necessarily mean a bad thing. Sometimes it's even better than you mapped out on paper, right? We have to be accountable and adaptable, right? And this is why all three of these things go together here. Okay. So here's your homework then is to go over into the community and tell us what is that one thing and what's the date. That's what I want to know. Your one thing and your date. Okay. Because that's going to start the race, right? That's like, okay, great. Time is ticking, but in a good way. Like, okay, because you have this roadie why. You can see where this is taking you. You know how this is going to help scale your revenue, your results, your reach, your, whatever it is that you are really wanting to see multiply. This is how we do it. Okay. So tomorrow, I'm going to just share about what tomorrow is, and then I will open it up for questions for people who are on live tomorrow. We're going to pull all this together. Okay, so we've talked about how do you reclaim and multiply your hours with those business boundaries and those time scaling schedules. And then we've talked about how do I multiply my team and my time with the scalable SOPs, right? And getting everything in one place in that CEO dashboard. And how do I now multiply my growth with this growth mapping instead of goal setting, right? You have a lot of tools in your hand, right? Now what you need to do is go, okay, how does this apply to me? how does this apply to my business? Where are my gaps and where are my opportunities? And that's what we're going to work on tomorrow so that the P of warp is that you profit more with time scaling roadie, right? We're going to tie this all together with that roadie method. And we'll have some extended more back and forth time to really look at, how to actually apply this in your business and what that looks like. And I'm happy to share more tomorrow if you and I haven't already had a strategy session about what it looks like to get support and what this time scaling team bonus is all about and things like that. So bring your questions for that tomorrow. But for anyone who's still on live now, let me go back there. Talking about strategies today. So as you're thinking about your one thing, you're thinking about your finish line, and you're thinking about the roadie of that, and then, okay, what are the pieces of this and whatever. Does anyone who's on live have either a question or something that you want to share? Could be like an aha or something that was really helpful for you. Either way, we'll just kind of leave it open for a few minutes and see how I can help you. I'm gonna get a drink.
I have a question. So I get this whole thing with the one thing that's an important thing coming up, but when there's, again, several things in real life that have to be done by that date, do we go back through and plan times for those things also? Or if there's shorter things that have to be done, say in 3 weeks, 4 weeks, whatever, that have a timeline, where do those all come in?
That's a great question, Debbie. And again, it's going to be very specific to your situation and all of that. Here's what I'm challenging you to do. We all have lots of stuff going on all the time. It's never going to be where I only have one thing, right? But here's what I'm talking about. Like when it comes to your business, what is one thing that will actually move it forward? Now, this doesn't mean that I put everything else on hold in my life and that's all I do, right? Maybe it's 1 hour a week, right? Because that's going to be the next step is once you have the strategy, let's go back here. Now we're going to create the systems and the schedule for when that's going to happen. So it doesn't mean this is the all-consuming thing, right? But this is making sure that this thing is moving forward. So, yes, you may have other personal things going on, right? But in business, we cannot be all or nothing. Because if we are, we're not going to be in business. And yes, there are times where I have had to literally shut my office door and be like, for this time, I can't give any time to my business because this is so consuming and needing and whatever. For a season, for a short season, for a time, not as a normal thing. So I would say, Debbie, what is one thing that you can do that's going to propel your business forward? That's what I want you really focusing on. We're here to scale our business. That doesn't mean we don't have other things that we're doing in life. And then now it's you starting to get that ball going. So just saying, I don't have time. I don't have time to think about this. I don't have time to think about this. And then we kick the can down the road, right? And we get to the end of the year and we're no closer to that thing that God put on our heart, at the beginning of the year than we were before. So I would say, when it comes to my business, what's one thing that if I completed or got this, got to this point, that it would help move my business forward faster. And then you can pick that. You can start breaking that down. Is that helpful?
Yeah, because I know that my one thing is getting the system in place because I literally know I spend hours every day moving things on my phone calendar from one day to the next, from one day to the next, and feeling guilty that things fall through the cracks or overwhelmed. And I know that that would make the biggest difference in freeing up time and moving my
Yeah,
business forward.
yeah. Which doesn't mean, so Debbie is an accountant, or she does stuff with people and their accounting. I don't know if you call yourself an accountant, but anyway, she works with people on their taxes. So that doesn't mean that as you're doing that, Debbie, you're not serving any clients because I know you have some client loads right now. You've shared with me about what you're working on, right? But what it is you are giving some intentional time and you have a plan to build these systems out so they don't just keep getting pushed away because all you're doing is focusing on the in your business versus on your business. So yes, that would be a great thing to focus on. And here's the thing, you can make it be 12 weeks, or like Melanie shared, she's got something she wants to get out in the next 6 weeks. Great. Like, so it doesn't have to be 12 weeks, but I wouldn't go give yourself any longer than 12 weeks that you're forecasting out because that's just too far off that now you feel like you have all this time or that thing feels so big that you're never going to get there. And then we have a tendency to put it off or yeah, or feel overwhelmed and not do anything. Okay, anybody else? Question, thoughts? Can launch be my one thing? Lorian, tell me what you mean by launch.
I mean, launch my business. It's up and running. I just need to move it and relaunch it. And there are steps to that, but can launching on this date be my goal? Is
Sure,
that one
sure.
thing?
Yeah, here's
I
the
was saying I
thing.
had too many, so
Yeah, here's the thing. Like you guys are the I always say you're the CEO, you get to decide, right? So if like, okay, I want, and but you have to define then what does launch mean? Okay, because launch can be very generic and very whatever. So now what you're going to do is you're like, okay, I'm launching this thing, and here's the date. You have to have that very clear roadie. What does that look like? What does that mean that I am launching this thing on this date? Like what exactly, is
is
this final
involved.
product? Yes, or whatever. It doesn't have to be physical product, but just whatever, right? And then again, you're going to start brainstorming all the pieces of that, and then you're going to categorize and prioritize and start putting some smaller milestone dates on things so that you've got, that if I follow this path, right, if I just take this one chunk at a time, I will be there by the end of this time period, or at least very close to it, right? Again, is that helpful?
Yes, thank you.
Yeah, so as long as you define what that roadie is, and then you start breaking up into the very specific steps that are going to get you there, it can be anything, right? And that's the beauty of it is it's not like I'm telling you this is what you have to do. I'm a time scaling strategist. So you bring me what you want to do. I'm not saying this is the one way you have to do it. Like there are coaches out there who say this is how you have to market your business. This is how you have to serve your clients. This is how you have to da, da, da. I'm not here to tell you that. I've tried a whole lot of different things, and so I do have a lot of experience with different models, and I can tell you how ones are going to be more effective with your time or not. But like my goal is go, what do you want to do? Okay, now let's look at the time factor. How do we like make this thing actually happen? Because you got the strategies, the systems, the schedules in place. So good. Anybody else? Maybe you're like, Lissa, I just want your brain on my thing. Like, I wish we could sit down and do this. We can. Grab a time scaling schedule strategy session. Let's talk about what you're wanting to work on, what you want to see happen, what kind of a strategy map, what kind of systems, what kind of schedules would get you to that by the end of the year or even before, right? So grab one of those sessions, or if you have a way to connect with me some other way, like reach out to me. Because I want to make sure that like, okay, here are the resources that are out there to help me do this. All right. Well, I will see you guys tomorrow for day 4, where we're going to be bringing this all together. Bring your questions tomorrow because, again, we're going to be looking at how all 3 legs are not only essential, but I'm going to go a little bit deeper into each of them and what some of the elements are that you may or may not have. Or, like Debbie said, maybe you've got some version of them or you've heard them, but like now it's time to really do it. Or now it's time to like scale it to the next level because you are scaling as a CEO. You scale as a CEO before your business scales. Did you know that? You up level your beliefs, right? And your conviction and your confidence in what God has called you to way before you ever see it show up in your bank account or on your, whatever other metric you're measuring. Okay. But we start acting like the CEO. What if you were to show up tomorrow as a CEO who already had this? Who already had this roadie, right? I'm going to encourage you before you come tomorrow, really get clear on what you would love this to be by the end of the year and why this matters and show up as this has already happened. And now we just start backwards, reverse engineering. What would she have done to get there? Or maybe you want even bigger, like maybe you're thinking a year down the road or 5 years down the road with that vision. Like come thinking like her tomorrow. And then we'll look at the strategies, the systems, the schedules, like, and okay, how do I make sure that these things are scaling me to this place, not just slowing the process on the way there? So, all right, I could talk all day. This excites me. So, I will see you guys tomorrow. And in between now and then, I will see you over inside the community. I'm so glad you were here.